Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Orlah. We're up to Perek Bet Mishnah Tetvav. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'in Nishmat, Neria ben Tzvetlana, Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Yisraelov, Menuchatam beGan Eden. Amen. The Mishnah says, Tavlin shel tiruma v'shel kilei kerem shenaflu lebagdera. If spices of tiruma and of kilei kerem fell into a pot of food, lo ba'elu kidei letabel v'lo ba'elu kidei letabel, and there was not enough of these spices or of those spices to spice the food on their own, meaning there wasn't enough of tiruma spices or of kilei kerem spices to spice the food on their own, v'nitztarfu v'tivlu, but they combined and spiced the food together, meaning their flavors were similar, so that they reinforced each other and combined to flavor the food. Asur zarim umutar lekohanim. The food is prohibited to non-kohanim, but it is permitted to kohanim who are permitted to eat tiruma. Since both tiruma and kilei kerem are prohibited to non-kohanim, they combine to prohibit the food to a non-kohen. This ruling follows the view of the Tanna Kama in Mishnah 10 that ingredients with two different prohibitions combine with each other to prohibit a mixture. But since tiruma is permitted to kohanim, the kilei kerem by itself does not prohibit the food to a kohen. Now, since kohanim are allowed to eat tiruma, the only substance prohibited here to a kohen is the kilei kerem, and that's not able to flavor the food by itself. The food is therefore permitted to kohanim according to the view of the sages in Mishnah 11, who say that zeh v'zeh gorem mutar. When this one and this one cause it, it is permitted. Rabbi Shimon matir lezarim v'lakohanim. Rabbi Shimon permits it to both non-kohanim and to kohanim because he holds that two prohibitions do not combine to prohibit. He is consistent with his ruling in Mishnah 10 above. And that is the end of Mishnah Tet Vav. Mishnah Tet Zayin now presents a similar ruling in regard to the permitted meat of sacrificial offerings that was cooked together with forbidden sacrificial meat. Now, as an introduction, the meat of most korbanot, sacrificial offerings, is eaten either by kohanim or by the person bringing the offering and his guests, with only a small amount of it being burned on the mizbech, on the altar. However, certain things can happen to an offering that prohibit its meat from being eaten. If an offering is made with the intention of eating its meat beyond the time permitted for it, or with the intention of burning its sacrificial parts on the altar beyond the time permitted for placing them on the altar, the entire offering becomes invalid and is called pigul. The meat is forbidden even to kohanim under the penalty of keret, like we will see in Mishnah Masechet Zvachim, chapter 2, Mishnah 2. Its meat may not be eaten. Also, the meat of a valid offering that was left over beyond the time for eating it becomes forbidden, and it's called notar. Like pigul, notar may not be eaten even by kohanim under penalty of karet. We will see that in Mishnayot Masechet Kritut, chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Its meat may not be eaten. The Mishnah discusses the case of meat from a valid offering that was cooked together with pigul, notar, and chulin, which is ordinary non-holy meat. Chaticha shel koche kodashim, if a piece of koche kodashim meat, which is permitted only to a kohen. Now, just to understand why it says koche kodashim, the sacrificial offerings brought in the Bet HaMikdash in the temple fall into two groups: koche kodashim and koche kodashim kalim, right? Most holy offerings and offerings of lesser holiness. The offerings in both groups are holy, but the laws of Kodesh Kodashim are stricter than those of Kodashim Kalim. One example of this is that meat of Kodesh Kodashim offerings like Chatat and Asham, a sin offering, a guilt offering, they may be eaten only by Kohanim, whereas the meat of Kodashim Kalim like Shalamim, the Shalamim offering and the Todah offering, they in general may be eaten even by non-Kohanim. So, if a piece of Kodesh Kodashim meat, the stricter one, the Chatat and the Asham, if that piece, which is permitted only to a Kohen, v'shel pigul, v'shel notar, and a piece of pigul meat and a piece of notar meat, which are prohibited even to a Kohen, were cooked together with pieces of chulin, non-holy meat, and there was enough chulin meat to nullify the kodesh kodashim meat or the pigul meat and notar meat, but not enough to nullify both of them together. Now, the meat of an offering like tiruma needs 100 times as much chulin to nullify it. Asur zarim, the Mishnah says, the mixture is prohibited to non-kohanim because the kodashim meat and the pigul and notar meat, all of which are prohibited to non-kohanim, combine to prohibit the mixture. Since the prohibited items, the kodashim, pigul, and notar, are all the same substance, they're all meat, they combine to prohibit the mixture, even though they are from different prohibitions. Again, this follows the view of the Tanna Kama in Mishnah 10. Umutar lekohanim, so it's prohibited to non-kohanim, but it is permitted to kohanim for whom the kodashim meat at least is permitted. Now, since the kodashim meat is permitted to kohanim, the only substance prohibited here to a kohen is the pigul and notar. Since there is enough chulin to nullify them, the mixture is permitted to a kohen. This follows the rule, the view of the sages in Mishnah 11. Rabbi Shimon matir lezarim v'lekohanim, but Rabbi Shimon rules the mixture is permitted both to non-kohanim and to kohanim. According to Rabbi Shimon, prohibited items do not combine to prohibit a mixture. Here too, Rabbi Shimon is following his view in Mishnah 10 that two prohibitions do not combine to forbidden. Therefore, as long as you have to nullify, you'll nullify. You don't have to nullify all of them together. You can nullify each one. You have enough chulin to nullify each one on its own. And that is in Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.